we should get into the really important stuff.
Yes.
So, with the new Batman movie
Yes.
set for release next year, I was thinking, what kind of lawsuits would be filed if people ever found out that Bruce Wayne is Batman?
Well, right. So first of all, I mean, Bruce Wayne would be subjected to some massive civil liability because now you have, before you had this shadowy figure who has no name, no address, nothing to sue. And once you find it, what we call a deep pocket, like Bruce Wayne behind it, even these criminals who have been beaten up by him, and in my opinion, rightly so, are going to have all kinds of lawsuits against Bruce Wayne. And Greg, I don't know if Lou told you, I am by my own reckoning, one of the premier DC and DC Comics experts with a smattering of Batman specialty. But I understand that you are a true Batman specialist.
I'm a lover of comics. I was out of it for a while, but I recently got back into it. What is your specialty in DC if it's not that?
my area of expertise is probably 1980s Green Lantern and Batman. Some of the Norm Brayfogle art I liked, but I just got the DC Comics app. I don't know if you've gotten that, Greg, but holy cow. Goodbye 11 or 12 hours at a stretch. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, you excited about the Green Lantern show that's coming out on HBO Max?
I am, but I was so traumatized by the film with Ryan Reynolds that I just don't have a great deal of, that was the one I've been waiting for all my life. And that was a big letdown for me. So I was pretty bummed out. But, Lou, it's interesting. When you told me, when we were talking about DC Comics before we started the show, I know probably of the three of us, you're the least well-versed in the
Lou, you ever read an actual comic?
Lore.
Well, I just wanted to look, if I ever have to hire Danny, to be my attorney, I want him to talk about Green Lantern in the closing argument.
That's right.
Just find some way to bring it up.
I got to crowbar that in. But, it's funny. We talk about, Batman and vigilantism. One of the things, Batman would actually be a pretty annoying person to police because, it's one thing if he's picking up Two-Face or the Joker. Those guys probably already have 50 outstanding warrants. But, one of the things police do is they have to come into court and testify and put evidence in. So when he just ties a criminal up and leaves him on a lamppost with a note, that he's not coming into court to testify and put these guys away. So I can see a lot of law enforcement that's never really been brought up in the comics because it's not sexy. But that's a real problem.
Right. Has there ever been
real
a
issue with vigilantes
of anyone testifying with a mask on?
Right. I mean, you have to be able to identify the witness. I mean, the witness can't be anonymous. You have a constitutional right to confront your witnesses. Right. They can't come in, with a Spider-Man mask and be completely unrecognizable.
Greg, did you have a follow-up for that?
No, I mean, I agree. And the other problem is identifying Bruce Wayne as Batman. I don't know how in this sort of question that you've set up, Lou, I don't know how it exactly happens because anyone could essentially just dress up as Batman while you also have Bruce Wayne there, and then he could be like, well, no, I'm not Batman. Batman's right there.
Oh, right.
He's the Tony Clifton to Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, or even like Martian Manhunter, who I'm sure you've never heard of before, Lou.
No, I thought you actually made that
Martian Manhunter.
He's a real guy.
He's a real guy. He can take the form of whatever he wants. So he could just, immediately become Batman in that moment. And then how do you prove it,
Right. There's an explanation for everything. You're absolutely right in the world of DC.
I guess
or
for
Marvel.
this question, we have to assume that it's proven.
You assume that it's proven. You assume that he's come out maybe and admitted it, which I'm sure he has an alternative universe.
Right. So I guess the biggest question is it the insanity defense? My parents were killed. I dress up as a bat and run around the city. Is that his defense?
Absolutely. Not for civil liability. That's not going to, the lawsuits, that won't stop the lawsuits because it doesn't really matter if he's civilly and if he's insane, but it may matter if he's prosecuted for assault, but no, not for civil liability. He's going to be on the hook. And really his, insanity won't work because insanity requires showing that you either didn't understand the nature and consequences, which means that you were swinging a baseball bat at what you thought was a baseball, and it turned out to be someone's head. That is a rarer example of insanity. But the broader example, as was expanded probably several decades ago, includes not knowing that what you're doing is wrong. But it's not what you might think. It's not whether or not you personally think what you're doing is wrong. It's whether or not you're aware that society deems it wrong. So the minute you try to hide what you did or evade capture, then you've pretty much disproven insanity. If you want the insanity defense, you need to be like found with the body still talking to it, or not understanding that you have to hide from the police. So Bruce Wayne probably doesn't have a good insanity defense no matter what.
Even if he says, "I thought I was a bat the entire time."
Well, so what I would argue as a prosecutor is that now Your Honor, he doesn't think he's a bat. Obviously, he doesn't cheap or try to fly with sonar. He dresses up as a bat, and he's made it very clear that he does that as a totem, as a symbol to scare criminals who are, as you know, Greg, a quote cowardly and superstitious lot, end quote.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the prosecutor would probably point out, and sir, as we all know, bats do not have 8-pack abs. There's no reason why that would be
or
put
rubber
on the
nipples.
suit. Or rubber nipples.
Greg, I don't know about you, but I in reading these comics, especially me, I'm getting to be well into middle age now. It can be super depressing because even the accountants or like somebody selling a hot dog, they're all yoked.
Well, it might be. Are you reading like Rob Liefeld comics? It might be which comics you're reading exactly. Who's yoked?
Nobody's got a gut. It's super depressing. I mean, like it's even like older folks like Commissioner Gordon. I mean, they're all ripped. It's ridiculous.
Did you ever read the Gotham Central series that was like the late 90s, early 2000s? I think that's maybe the first series where I feel like they did sort of like pack on pounds for a couple of the cops, where they were sort of like a little more ordinary than the normal like Gotham City PD.
Definitely. But it gets out of control with some of these artists because they just make everybody from like the maintenance guy. The maintenance guy's yoked. It's out of control.
Right. Jim Lee loves drawing 42 muscles on each arm.
Right. Exactly.
And since we're talking about the intersection of Batman and the police, I mean, it's when you have the bat signal, it's pretty obvious that the police are working with this guy,
sanctioning. Sure.
Yeah. They're giving him carte blanche. What are they looking at? I mean, is there going to be a federal inquiry into what's going on in Gotham City?
You can almost equate it to the rioting because, the rioting in real life right now is an example of citizens taking the law into their own hands. And Donald Trump has actually threatened local mayors that, hey, if you don't get it under control, I'm sending in the feds. It's not certain to what degree if the president does have federal authority to quell rebellion or send in the feds, so to speak. But, to some degree, the law requires cooperation. I mean, he can send it in if the local authorities don't want it. But generally speaking, the law prefers that he works in conjunction with local authorities. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting if the Gotham police are using a vigilante or allowing a vigilante to operate, and I guess the similar charge might be made by Trump that these mayors are allowing vigilantes to run amok. Then, I guess the feds could get involved. But the law doesn't. Generally speaking, the states and local governments have the primary responsibility for policing their own citizens. The federal government is not supposed to be a police power. That's why you don't have traditional federal police in uniforms the way that local police wear uniforms and they're called police. It's not, federal government isn't supposed to have the same thing because they're not the ones who are supposed to be in charge of keeping the order.
And with the what you brought up about Donald Trump, I think what was he calling it? He was trying to call them what anarchist jurisdictions, I think it was, or something like that. To because of, I guess, in Portland you have the presence of Antifa, and we often hear that Antifa isn't an organized group; it's an idea. But when you watch like a lot of these, a lot of videos, it's like, man, there sure are a lot of people dressed the same way in black with like shields and stuff, who happened to come together at the same time, almost like they sent out a memo and said, "Hey, be here at this time, and then we're going to go, burn down some buildings." Is Antifa an organization? I mean, how does the government determine whether that they are or not?
Yeah, that's a very tricky issue. And in fact, the FBI does track what it calls loosely organized criminal organizations. One example was probably, I think, 3-4 years ago. It made it either to the Supreme Court or the court right below it, but it was the fans of the Insane Clown Posse. I don't know if you remember hearing about this. It was probably in about 2014. The FBI classified them as a loosely knit criminal organization, which was really shocking to me because, I mean, they just seem like rabid fans. I don't know if they're any different than the Kiss Army or people who like Guar or I don't know who else, but I don't know what made them so different. But doing that, classifying them that way is a tool for law enforcement, because once you've classified a group as who cares if they're loosely knit? I mean, as long as you classify them as a criminal organization, that's just one more check in your box when you need to get a search warrant or a wiretap or listen in on what they're doing. And so, those are just little tiny bricks that keep building on the wall of building cases against folks. And a big step was classifying them as a criminal organization. So, yeah, the FBI actually investigates this kind of thing and makes its own unilateral, one-sided determinations that an organization is criminal.
I bet Batman would be so confused if he went to a Juggalo rally, and because they're dressed like everyone he should be beating up. But
exactly.
Well, there's actually a ton of thugs that are dressed like juggalos essentially in Gotham City. But if I can get to Batman real quick.
That's right. That's true.
So,
that's true.
while you're here, I have to ask about the Robins, right? So there's been 5 Robins. Yes. They've all become Robin between the ages of 9 and 16. So real world prosecution, what is Bruce Wayne looking at as far as child endangerment?
Absolutely child abuse, and probably, you could say for Jason Todd, probably murder. I mean, probably murder in the sense that we talked about felony murder earlier. I mean, he's engaged in a felony, any number of felonies for a minor. I don't know how old Jason Todd was at the time of death.
14,
but 14. So, I mean, that's, child endangerment resulting in death. In some states, that could be a murder charge if it's the qualifying felony. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest dings against Batman is his use of Robins. I mean, they are, especially, including his own son. So I think that is categorically one of his main character flaws,
right?
And one that is unquestionably criminal. I mean, you can talk about vigilantism. I mean, we accept vigilantism in the world of comics and fantasy. We like it because it allows us to live outside of the rules that we all are confined by. But in real life, we generally don't like vigilantes. We don't like people operating outside the law. But even that is tough to suspend your reality, which is that he unquestionably endangers children. I mean, he's a criminal that way.
Yeah, a few years ago, I forget what series it was or what issue it was, or even who pointed out. But someone was talking to, I think it was Tim Drake Robin, and it was a girl, I forget who she was, and she was explaining he lets you dress up in bright colors and hop around while he fights. You're a distraction, so it's easier for him to do his job. Right. Like, that's essentially how he uses all the Robins. Why are they dressed in bright colors when he's in the dark? It doesn't really make sense.
Sure. The targets. Yeah. Right. I know. It doesn't make any sense.
It's easier for him to do his job while you're looking at the little kid hopping around in yellow and green.
Right. It presumes something really nefarious about, the people that you're right. Exactly. He's just sort of his court jester. It's pretty bad stuff. I got to tell you.
Greg, we're gonna have to let Danny go, but you weren't here for the opening where Danny recounted. We were on a different podcast together, and we talked about the birth of my son, and now I feel weird if he grows up to be a fan of Batman, because I just see Batman as someone who just puts children in danger. So
yeah, actually, the current Robin is his son, is Batman's son, Damian Wayne.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's actually a very real thing that he's doing right now.
Right. Do you think he's going to get killed in front of his son at some point? Is there going to be that vicious circle?
No, Damian Wayne
nobody ever really dies
before Batman.
Definitely, yes. I think he's on the road. He's a bit of a loose cannon.
Uh-huh.